Hello, and welcome to another episode of Just Scare Us Already. I'm your host, Cheyenne, with my co host, Dave. And today
Hello.
we're going to be talking about another double feature, Strange Darling and Afraid. You want to kick it off?
Yeah. As the month of August ends, moviegoers were given two more new films in the horror genre. We have the Miramax release of Strange Darling and the film Afraid, another entry in the ever growing list of Blumhouse releases. Did these films have what it takes to finally scare us already? I don't know. Hey, Shy, tell us a little bit about Strange Darling.
So, Strange Darling was released on August 23rd, 2024, directed and written by J.T. Molnar, starring Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner. In Strange Darling, nothing is what it seems when a twisted one night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. Currently, this movie sits with a staggering 96% critic score and 84% audience score, which I think is one of the higher ones we've seen lately, especially from a more or less indie flick.
Yeah, overall, Strange Darling was a decent film. I thought the use of telling the story out of order worked well to deceive the audience, but I still felt it was a little predictable. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the film was nicely done, but there were some scenes that I felt were a little too long and dragged out. How about you?
I totally agree. I thought that at first I was a little confused when it said movie told in six chapters, and I was like, okay, this is going to be weird. And then it starts with chapter three, and then I really enjoyed it. I thought, oh, this is such an interesting way because I did, like you said, it's predictable. If you see the trailer, I at least was able to kind of tell what was going to happen, not fully. I was shocked by some of the stuff that was revealed, but the
Hmm.
main twist of it I kind of saw coming. But I do think that the way that they did it, if you're not someone who has a tendency to overthink trailers like I do, you may be shocked by it. And I thought that it was well done. I wish they had saved it for a little bit later in the movie, but thinking it over, I don't think that would have been possible with some of the stuff that happens later on. Um, but I thought it was filmed really well. It was a good looking movie. I really enjoyed Willa Fitzgerald. I had already seen her in House of Usher. I thought she did a phenomenal job in that TV show. And then Kyle Gallner is from Smile, which was at least one movie I recognized him from.
Hmm.
And so I thought he did a really good job in this one as well. I like that he had more parts to it than in Smile. I felt like I got to see more of his acting chops. There were the other actors that were in the movie that I thought were not good. Most of them, I don't know if it was the writing or the directing of them, but they all felt really weird and campy. But besides that, I thought the movie was actually like a genuinely good movie.
Yeah, I agree that Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner they did a nice job with the characters of the lady and the demon. I thought they held the film together. They definitely kept me interested in the story, even though I knew where the story was heading. I think they both did a good enough job where it definitely they definitely kept me entertained and interested in the story. The other characters, like you said, I don't think they really mattered all that much. I think the director wanted to give a nod to a couple of veteran actors. That's why they had the
Mm-hmm.
characters of, the older hippies that were living in the farmhouse. Um, that scene was weird,
Oh
and
gosh.
spoiler alert, but for anybody who wants to eat a breakfast like that, good luck. So, you know,
Tempting.
yeah, no, not even. I couldn't even imagine eating a whole stick of butter like that. But again, random characters, not really needed, but they filled the fluff, so to speak, with the random characters. Um, but yeah, overall, I must admit, after watching Strange Darlings, I actually left the theater disappointed. I was
Really?
hoping for so much more. I wanted more of a film. You know, when a film considers is considered to be a horror film, I want more. But I will say, after thinking about the film over the next couple of days, I came to the conclusion that the film was not horrible. Would I consider
Yeah.
this a horror film? In my opinion, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Although not a great film, Strange Darling works as an entertaining mystery thriller that told a story and should have left a very visible message to those who venture out each night looking for that one night stand.
Yeah,
Definitely give them to think about. And
I
I would have
agree. I think.
I
Go
would
ahead.
have liked to had a little more deception prior to the
Mm-hmm.
twist reveal, but I think that probably would have slowed the pace of the film even more.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I said, I wish it had taken longer to do the reveal, but I really just don't know how they would have done that with some of the
Hmm.
things that have to happen in the later chapters.
Hmm.
But I do agree. I think it's not really a horror movie. I would say it's more of a mystery thriller, maybe suspense thriller. It kind of reminded me a bit of Memento
Hmm.
in that sense of trying to keep up the pace with the character and what's going on. Obviously, Memento, the character doesn't know anything as well as the audience, versus this one, both the characters clearly know what's going on. But yeah, I would say it probably falls under the same category as that movie of more of a mystery thriller than horror. But I guess
Yeah,
anything with a serial killer goes under horror automatically, it seems.
yeah, yeah, true. And we only know the serial killer premise from the details that they give us at the beginning of the film, which was kind
Hmm.
of you know a nod to some of the older films where there's this narrator. The film you're about to watch is blah
Uh
blah 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 blah.
huh.
That kind of thing. But I do say the use of telling the story out of order worked, and it reminded me a lot of Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, which was also a
Yeah.
Miramax film. So keep that in
Oh,
mind.
okay.
Yeah. So it it wasn't as random as Pulp Fiction, where e- even to this day, I still try to piece together the sequence of events in Pulp Fiction.
Can I admit
This
that I've never seen it?
what?
I've never seen Pulp Fiction.
Oh God! Well, you need to watch that. I mean,
I'm not
Pulp
a
Fiction.
huge Quentin Tarantino fan.
But you know what? Pulp Fiction. It's not for everyone. I will admit, but the way he tells the story out of order, it's very interesting because
Hmm.
you know you have to piece it together, and then sometimes even when I try to piece it together, some things are like, well, wait a minute, is it this or is it that? Whereas with Strange Darling, it all pieces together fine. It's
Uh-huh.
basically taking a movie. If you were to take The Exorcist and broke it up into six chapters or six different sequences, you could probably do it. But the way they did it worked as far as deceiving the audience and then saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, psych! Here's the twist." Because I think
Yeah.
if they would have showed the film in its straight entirety, you would have gotten it from the first 5 or 10 minutes.
And it would have been very boring.
Yeah.
It's not, if you think about the movie in sequence, it's not a thrilling movie,
Hmm.
but out of order, it made it easier to kind of fall into the suspense of it, because at one point you're rooting for one character and then the next point you're rooting for obviously another character, and you're kind of going back and forth with it,
Yeah.
and trying to keep up with what's going on, that it kind of keeps you in the movie. Versus, yeah, if it was in just normal order, it would have been any other Lifetime killer movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And my only other critique which isn't a huge problem, and I won't go too much into detail about it, but the ending could have been a little shorter.
A
It
lot shorter.
it 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 lasts a little too long. I don't know what the director was going for, but we got the gist of it. So it just seemed a little too dragged out. And at one point, I felt a little awkward. I mean, I was just like, okay,
And maybe
is
that's
this going to
what it
end
was meant
anytime
to
soon?
be.
What was that?
It reminded me of In a Violent Nature's ending, because they do the same thing. That long, not a big spoiler, but the long shot of just one
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
It was the same thing, I think, in a Violent Nature, and I don't know if it's a trend right now, but I've seen it in a few movies of just
Okay.
these long, awkward solo takes of just a film, and I don't know if the actors even know it's still being filmed.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, with In a Violent Nature, it was this long, dragged out scene of her staring out to the woods. And
Hmm.
for me, that kind of worked because you're just waiting for something to pop out. I wanted some type of
Hmm.
cliche-ish, blah, there's there's the killer. He's right there in your face kind of thing. But it never happened. It just dragged on to this endless. But for this movie, Strange Darling,
That's
the
true.
ending, it was a little uncomfortable. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I get it. you know, let's move on. Roll the credits, do something. And
Maybe
maybe
they
that's
had
what
to
the
hit a
maybe
mark.
that's what maybe that's what the director was going for. He wanted to make you feel uncomfortable, you know.
I just wouldn't see the reason to at that point in how it ends. Maybe
Yeah,
they just had to hit a quota. Like they were like, it has to be 2 hours or however long the movie was. That's
maybe, but yeah,
the
I
only thing I
I
could think.
I, I definitely thought it was a little too dragged out. But overall, though, I will say I give Strange Darlings a thumbs up. It
I would
it
agree.
it
I
it
give it
wasn't
a
great.
thumbs up.
Yeah, it didn't scare me, but it was worth the watch.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely if you can get it on streaming, I would say to take the time to watch it. I thought it was very good. I'm hoping JT Molnar will do more. I tried to look at his bio. It doesn't look like he's done anything of like well noted. Everything's pretty indie. And I'm not most of them I haven't heard of. So hopefully they will get their break going forward and we'll be able to see more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I would even venture out to say see it in a theater. I think seeing it on the big screen, some of the scenes were worthwhile seeing on a big screen. I don't know if you'll get the
Mhm.
same impact watching it on television or
That's
on your
true.
computer or whatever, but there were some scenes that I think were worth seeing it on a big screen, and for them to promote at the beginning of the film that it was shot entirely in 35 millimeters. So that also tells you that it's a movie to watch in a theater.
Yeah, I just don't know how many theaters are still showing it or
Yeah,
showing it in general. I'm
yeah.
hoping that because it's gotten such a high rating, maybe they will prolong the screenings of them and push them to more theaters.
Hmm.
I can only hope, you know. When it comes to these indie flicks, they're so hard to find. I recently watched The Wasp, which is a drama, and it was playing in one theater out of
Oh,
all the theaters in my area.
oh,
So,
okay, okay. I
but
didn't I didn't even know that
anyways,
was released yet.
yeah, it just came out. It's not a horror. We won't cover it on this podcast because it's
Mm,
definitely a drama through and through. Drama mystery, maybe. Good
okay,
movie, though, if you want something to watch, but
all right.
not for this podcast.
All right. Well, let's take a look at our other film, Afraid.
Afraid. AFR capital AID. Released August 30th, 2024. Directed and written by Chris Weitz. Starring John Cho, Catherine Waterston, and Havana Rose Liu. The story follows Curtis and his family as they are selected to test a revolutionary new AI device called Aya. Taking smart homes to the next level, once the unit is in the home, Aya seems to be able to do it all. She can make sure nothing and no one gets in the way of her new family. Currently, it sits at 22% critic score and 48% audience score. So, not doing too well, which sadly is not super surprising for a Blumhouse flick at this point.
Very, very true.
So, what did
So,
you think? Because you saw this first.
well, for me, the film Afraid was another mediocre film from Blumhouse. I feel like Blumhouse is willing to release anything that is current and relatable, but has absolutely no
Mm-hmm.
substance. Similar to the Blumhouse film Megan, here we have another story in which AI becomes corrupt and vengeful and will stop at nothing to get what it wants. And surprisingly, with a runtime of an hour and 25 minutes, I won't say surprisingly, but
Yeah.
unsurprisingly, with that short of a runtime, the film felt rushed and incomplete. It felt like
Mhm.
several scenes were edited out that would have helped develop the story. What do you think?
I totally agree. I thought that it felt long in terms of not a great movie, but
Hmm.
short in terms of, like you said, a lot of things felt like they were added in and then either dropped in the writing floor or dropped in the editing floor. Things just didn't really seem to go anywhere where they could have gone. I thought there
Hmm.
some of the concepts that were brought up were interesting. Obviously, we all know how AI is being used nowadays. Deep fakes and the weird thing where they can copy your voice and all these different really scary things. So AI being in the household like that is something that could be genuine horror and can be done well. Sadly, though, this movie, like we said, dropped the ball on it. It felt predictable for one thing. The moment we meet one of the characters, it's so clear what their role is in the whole situation. Honestly, when you meet most of the characters, you can kind of figure it out pretty
Hmm.
quickly.
Hmm.
Um, it was, I'm happy, spoiler alert. So pay attention to the time of when you can skip. But I'm really happy it didn't end up being aliens like I thought from the trailer. I really thought that's where they were going. I remember there was a glimpse of an alien though, so I don't know if they had plans to do something like that and then left it or what, but I vaguely remember seeing little clips in the trailer. But all in all, I thought the actors did the best they could. I'll say that. It was a really good team of actors. John Cho's a good actor. Catherine Waterston's a really good actress. I think I seen Havana Rose Liu in something, and I know she can act well. But this movie did not utilize them well at all. It felt like the mom character who was very much against AI at first just suddenly was very chill with it and very cool with it and didn't care that her kids were breaking all these rules. It just felt
Hmm.
very yeah, like you said, it felt like they left a lot out and edited a lot out for maybe a shorter runtime to keep kids and younger audience attention held, but the movie definitely suffered for that.
Yeah, I would only disagree as far as your opinion on the acting. In my opinion, I felt everyone dialed it in. Um, I don't. It seemed like, and I will admit, I went back and took a look. So they first started talking about this film in 2022. So 2 years
Oh wow.
ago, this movie was in the works or being talked about. So it kind of felt that way, that it was something that they talked about, they shelved it, they talked about it, they shelved it, and then finally when they greenlit it, I don't think anybody really cared. And it just
Mhm.
seemed like the actors and they just kind of phoned it in, especially the boss played by
Oh god, that
David
was he was so
Carradine.
bad.
Yeah, I mean, he was almost laughable half the time, and it seemed like he was more happy being out of the movie at that one point where the company was
Yeah.
sold. He seemed like he was like, "Yeah, I'm out of this movie. I'm done. I don't have to. I don't have to come on set anymore. Bye."
Yeah, the
So
phrase, the words that he said of "I'm gonna take this check basically and run," I felt like was the actor fully just saying it out loud.
exactly, exactly. And it just felt so much like Megan. The whole
Yeah.
voice thing and the I mean it to me it just was like I don't know if you ever saw the Disney film Smart House
Yes.
where
Yes.
where the family gets this upgrade and their house is computerized and next thing you know the computer or the AI wants to be the mother of the house and tries to take over. It basically felt like that slash
Mhm.
Megan. And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how ridiculous some of the scenes were. I felt nothing for any of the characters. And like
No.
you said, everything evolved so quickly. It was like the mother flipped right away, and the father, who was all for AI, all of a sudden, with really no explanation, didn't trust
Yeah.
it.
He flipped
So
really quick
yeah,
in a
so it
way
was
that
like,
was so,
wait,
and I
what?
get what they were trying to do with the two parents switching positions, but
Yeah,
yeah, it was just like instantaneous. He saw one thing and said, "Oh, this thing is trouble." And it's like, "What? Where did you get that?" I
yeah,
understand saying this is too much, or if they had, and like, it would have been better too if they had found out things that the AI was doing with the children as
hmm
a driving force to not trusting it. But like, they didn't even know anything that was happening with the kids, and the kids
no,
were going through their whole own thing, which I did not like any of the kid actors. I mean, they were fine for the most part, but I didn't care for them. Like, the boy, the youngest boy, was so annoying and acted way too young for what he looked. He acted like a 5 year old. He looked like he was at least 8 years old. So that was annoying. And I'm sorry, but these emoji faces that they had on the masks
yeah,
at one
yeah.
point were so dumb and actually made me so vehemently angry at the movie. Like, I don't know why I was so angry seeing them, and I was like, "This is so stupid."
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it just it had it. I won't even say it had its moments. I mean, it was a film. I don't know how to say this, but I mean, it was basically nothing more than another popcorn movie that had no substance and very little scares. It just seems like Bloomhouse continues to churn out films that attract younger moviegoers looking for some cheap jump scares. But when it
Mhm.
comes to Afraid, it tried to prey on our fear of AI taking over mankind, but it failed to tell that story in any type of convincing, method. And then with films like Megan 2 and Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and The Black Phone 2, it just seems like Bloomhouse just doesn't want to get away from this business model, and it makes
Mhm.
me very afraid of the future for the
Did
horror
Blumhouse do
genre.
Black Phone?
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay,
apparently
I like
they
that movie
have
though.
Black
So
Phone too. You know what?
I liked number
Black
one.
Phone was decent, but it had its problems. But if
Yeah.
they're already trying to make a two, I mean, come on, some films don't need a sequel.
No, I agree. That one does not need a sequel. That movie was good for what it was.
Yeah.
I think I liked it a lot because it kind of went backwards to like the 80s genre. It felt very at home for a new movie.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Mhm.
I would say it does not need a number two. I totally agree with that much. A number two would be so stupid. I think that Megan does not need a sequel. Megan in and of itself is just the new Chucky movie that came out with the AI idea,
Mhm.
anyways.
Mhm.
And then Five Nights at Freddy's one was already so far from the video games and the storyline, and it was so boring. And yeah, so Blumhouse, they have not, I think they used to be okay. I used to like their movies. I know that much.
Hmm.
But now they just feel like, yeah, like you said, they're taking up any script that they can get that they think is going to bring in teens and tweens and maybe even kids at this point. I'll say that Afraid was better than Night Swim,
Okay.
probably even better than Imaginary. No,
Mm.
I don't know. I think Imaginary might have been a little better. And I didn't like that movie anyways. But
Well, well, that's the sad part is that Night Swim, Imaginary, they weren't great movies. They weren't even good movies. I think they had a more developed story than
yeah,
Afraid. Um, I think they took the time to try to develop a story that made you somewhat care about what was going on. I think Afraid basically threw it at you and said, "Here it is." And half the time it was like, "Okay, why should I care?"
yeah. Honestly, I think Afraid could have been a fine episode in an anthology series like
Mhm.
American Horror Stories or even the new Twilight Zone, a short
Mhm.
movie about AI that takes over a family. That would have been fine. But
Mhm.
yeah, a full length movie, a movie that was already devoid of substance and plot, just did not work for it. We all know what AI is like nowadays. We all know the fears of AI. They didn't say anything new in this movie.
No, no. And to be honest, I did not like the ending.
Uh,
I don't need a happy ending. I don't need
yeah.
rainbows and, unicorns at the end of the movie, but for me, the ending was so random and incomplete. It was just like, okay, are you just purposely setting us up for a sequel? That's all
Yes.
it. That's all it felt like. You get some movies where it's like, ooh, there may be a sequel. Could there be a sequel? Oh, they kind of left a
Yeah.
little, you know, notch in the window or a crack in the door to maybe make a sequel. This was like, hello, there's going to be a sequel. Look for
Yeah.
Afraid 2 and Afraid 3.
I think that it was, I don't mind the ending only because I really prefer unhappy endings in horror movies. But you can tell, yeah, it was definitely just supposed to be sequel bait.
That's because you're dark.
That is because I'm dark. That's why I like Guillermo del Toro movies. I like that his movies always have a somewhat depressing ending.
I'm
Because in
dark.
horror, like it's horror, you shouldn't have happy go lucky endings, in my opinion. It should be, dang, that sucks.
Hey,
It's never gonna end type of story.
I totally agree that it doesn't always. I mean, I don't want everything to be a unhappy ending. I mean, because then that's pretty depressing. I
Yeah,
mean,
not
we we
every
we
movie in the
we
world.
go to the movies for an escape, and we want the hero to win. We want,
Okay,
you know,
Nicole Kidman.
we make movies magic. But no, we want the hero to win. We want someone to come out alive. We want if every horror movie ended with everyone dying, it would be pretty depressing. But I do agree,
I
not
mean,
every movie has to end with a happy ending. But for this movie, Afraid, the way it ended was basically like, oh well, you have no choice, and we're gonna make a sequel.
yeah, but I don't mind it for this movie. So like when I say I don't want happy endings, I mean like I liked Come Play, that it was still a kind of depressing ending. It was good for the most part. The boy was okay, but depressing because spoiler alert, but the mom had to sacrifice herself. Same for Mama by Guillermo del Toro. One of the kids had to go with her. Mom got the other kid. So, not great happy endings, but not horrible. bad endings.
Well,
And this one I could appreciate because of the concept of like AI being all controlling.
mhm.
I could appreciate that the ending, even if it was not clickbait, but sequel bait.
Well, I will have to argue the point on, and I don't want to go off into a tangent. We can do that on another episode. But with Mama, uh, it 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 was right for, and spoiler alert, for the youngest daughter to go with the spirit, because she didn't
Hmm.
want to live in that world. She didn't want anything to
I
do
know,
with
but
the
it's still a depressing
family.
ending.
So it was like the oldest sister, she wanted to be with the family. She didn't want that life
Uh-huh.
anymore, where the baby, that's all she knew, was being raised by this spirit. So for her, that was her life. That was what she wanted. So it made sense. To me, that
And it
was
does.
actually a happy ending.
We'll do a Guillermo del Toro episode because I do like a lot of his movies, and I think we have a lot we could talk about with him.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
we will save that for an episode.
We could spend a nice long time with this. But so what did you give Afraid?
I gave it a thumbs down all the way. This is not worth it. This is not worth streaming. This is not worth maybe the bargain bin at Walmart, but Blumhouse just needs, they
Wow.
need to take a break. They need to take a break and they need to stop, or they need to really commit to just making kid horror movies, entry horror movies, if you will. But don't treat kids like they're dumb. Just small scares, light entrance into horror for little ones, but doing light horror, light intro into horror movies for younger audiences, kind of like the movie Splint, or Sting. Sorry, the movie Sting. Those kind of things, I'd be fine with. That's cool. Friday Nights at Freddy's was fine to do because that's a horror movie dedicated to younger children and slight older fans of the video game. Just stop promoting it to the all around horror fans because it's not. It's
Yeah.
not for us. So thumbs down. What about you?
Yeah, I would definitely give it a thumbs down, Kitty. It like you said, it wasn't a good film. Not a film that I would recommend seeing in theaters or streaming. I mean, if you have absolutely nothing else to do, that kind of film, it's not something that you will miss if you don't watch it. Um, and I think every generation has that production company that just will produce anything. I think when in the 80s it was New Line Cinema. I mean, they would produce
Oh,
anything. They would do the Freddy movies and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and whatnot. And I'm not talking about the first ones, but the number
yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The number of bad movies that they just churned out because of the name, and the
Hmm.
you know that's what kids wanted to see back then. It's all about bringing in the young audience, getting that cheap scare, and making that buck that they're getting at the movie
Yeah.
theater. I
And
hope
maybe we're
Bloom.
too picky.
Well, I don't mind these type of films. I actually go to watch them because I know they're bad. When I went to
Hmm.
see Imaginary and Terra and Freddy's, Five Nights at Fred, I knew those movies were bad. I knew they were going to be bad. I didn't go in there expecting, oh, this is going to be an Oscar winner. I knew they were going to be awful. But I do it because, one, I like horror movies, and two,
Yeah.
I like to sit in the dark and munch on popcorn and watch a movie.
And we get to do
Hope
this.
hope but hopefully one day they'll just scare us already.
Fingers crossed. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We look forward to finally entering spooky season. Now that summer is over, we start fall, and we will
Ooh.
hopefully get a whole bunch of movies. We have great ones, or at least ones that look great, coming out, like Heretic. Still super pumped for that movie. But before that, we have to sit through The Front Room by A24. So catch us when we watch that movie. And make sure that you like and subscribe and leave a comment down below on whether or not you agree with our recommendations or our opinions on these movies, and recommend us some stuff to watch and some themes to do for our podcast. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you.